Hello, and welcome to this episode of AdVocation Nation. Before we get started, I'd like to let you know that today we are discussing some topics which might be triggering for some, including domestic violence and sexual assault. If you or someone you know needs help, you can call the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-SAFE, which is 1-800-799-7233. If you or someone you know is in immediate danger, call 911. Today we'll be talking with City Hope, which is based in the San Diego County area, and they also have resources for those going through certain situations similar to this. We will include more information in the bio. Thank you for listening. Hello, I'm Cambria, your host of the AdVocation Nation podcast, a podcast dedicated to highlighting different advocacy stories and journeys from many walks of life. I decided to start this podcast with the goal of educating people about the many different forms that advocacy can take on by interviewing outstanding advocates in various professional, personal, and volunteer roles. Each of these guests have great wisdom to share about what it means to be an advocate and ways that you, the listener, can advocate and support ongoing efforts in your own life. Today, I am joined by Danielle Womack. Dani is the executive director of the nonprofit City Hope, which is a community-focused organization that serves the San Diego region by developing and implementing strategies to address a variety of undermet or hard-to-meet needs in the community. Specifically, they focus on issues such as trauma, domestic violence, human trafficking, homeless resource connection, financial literacy, communication, and social skills, etc. Dani holds a bachelor's degree in political science from the University of California, San Diego, and a Juris Doctorate from the University of the Pacific McGeorge School of Law, graduating with honors. She also serves in a range of leadership roles in governing boards in her community as of present. Dani has personally been a big help to me in discerning my future career pathway, so I'm very excited to have her here on the show to share some wisdom with us. Welcome, Dani.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here with you.
Yeah, thank you. So to start us off, could you just please share a little bit about your background and what eventually led you to start City Hope, and how did you feel that your background and experience really helped you address those needs?
Absolutely. So I don't think I ever saw myself in this position. From the time I was little, I wanted to be an attorney. And I would love to tell you it was from a recognized heart of advocacy. I just think I was a fighter and wanted to debate anything and everything that came along. But there was definitely a side that wanted to be supportive and a voice for the underdog. I think the people that weren't able to necessarily stand up for themselves. So early in life, I landed a job at a real estate company and ended up going into real estate and loved that. And it was able to help put me through my undergrad and then law school. And I was part of the DA's office and worked in the domestic violence court day in and day out. And definitely heard the stories and saw the stories and the heartbreak and the women in situations, and men too, where they couldn't break free. And it definitely left a big impact on my heart. After law school and all of that, I started a nonprofit, really working with women coming out of life-controlling issues. And then went into ministry for a while. And in that arena, found myself helping a woman who needed additional assistance. And from there, ended up through a strange set of circumstances as a chaplain for a police department here in my city. And that opened all kinds of doors and ideas as far as how much is left undone in those crisis situations. And truly, it was from seeing officers need to leave scenes and being on scenes that I had to leave where I knew so much more needed to be done, that there was nobody to do. And so we started City Hope to fill those needs and to come alongside and walk alongside people who needed to know someone would be there to support them, to advocate for them when they needed it, but also to help them advocate for themselves when they could.
Yeah, and that's wonderful. And I definitely think a big focal point of advocacy is making sure that you go in and provide people with the tools, but also know when to step back and help them really speak for themselves. And so I appreciate that. And also just hearing how you saw where needs were in the community and you saw where there were gaps in, meeting certain issues or certain responses and being able to kind of provide a resource for those spaces where there weren't currently resources. So that's really great and wonderful. So yeah, this leads me into my next question of just tell us a little bit more about City Hope, your mission, the work you do, your volunteers. What is City Hope all about?
I think it is bringing together the most amazing group of people and positioning them where their community needs them the most when they're most needed. So we go out and we recruit volunteers. And believe it or not, within about 20 hours worth of training, we give them all the tools that they need to be able to step into somebody's worst case situation and be helpful. We always say it's not our job to fix. We can't always fix. We really rarely can fix. But man, we can be incredibly helpful. And then we partner with schools and first responder agencies to have them call us and let us know when we can send a volunteer. So we respond to any kind of trauma working within the schools. It could be a difficult diagnosis that a teacher has to give, or students who passed away, or a teacher that passed away, or a crisis in the community that's impacting the children and staff. And so we'll get called in, either one volunteer, or sometimes we had to go in with a whole team and support the whole school. And we ended up having schools call and say, hey, we've got 16 kids that need someone to talk to, whether there was car accidents or grandma passed away or the dog died, whatever it may be. And so we ended up putting volunteers on campus for set hours every week so that they could just pull the kiddos from classes and talk to our volunteers. With first responders, they'll literally be at the scene of a death, a rape, a home invasion, domestic violence, or human trafficking, and they'll call us and we'll respond right to the scene. We take all the safety precautions necessary and we'll step in and help. So whether that's helping people get their loved ones picked up by a service, or processing through the aftermath of a violent crime, or literally helping them flee domestic violence or trafficking. We will literally take the victim and any impacted children with us and keep them safe, provide shelter, even relocation when necessary, connections to everything that they may need to be able to leave that violent situation. I think it's interesting what you said about seeing the need and filling it, because I would have told you when we started this that the need was those citizens that were in this time of crisis. And what we've discovered along the way is the volunteers are just as much in need. We get calls from volunteers that say things like, never before have I laid my head down on a pillow that night knowing I had saved a life. And to see our volunteers come alive and know that they're saving lives and making a difference, one call, one person at a time, is a need that we didn't see, but man, we are able to help fulfill, which is just incredible, absolutely incredible to see.
Yeah. And I think that's a beautiful thing about advocacy is that you aren't just giving to someone. You're not in this, superior role to them. You're actually gaining a lot and you're learning a lot through the process. And so it really sounds like City Hope does a good job of making sure all sides have their needs met and just really get to experience those life-changing moments. So my next question for you would be, what role has advocacy played in your work with City Hope and in other areas of the community? And what does advocacy mean to you?
It's such a great question, and it's played a huge role. I think one of the things that it's helped us realize is that advocacy is essential on every level of interaction. Sometimes our job is to help somebody advocate for themselves. Sometimes they're in a position where they just can't yet. And so our job is to help advocate to create a situation where that person can advocate for themselves. And it goes on up kind of the spectrum. We work with an organization that does a great deal of advocacy work when it comes to human trafficking survivors and the idea that laws need to change. We recognize the victims and the survivors of trafficking now different than we did before. And there's laws that we needed. California now has vacatur laws, which means that a woman has a chance of having her record expunged when it comes to crimes that were committed while she was being trafficked. And that is huge. And our organization is able to take advantage of the fact that another organization went to bat legislatively to advocate for those laws changing. We've had to advocate for students to be able to be in different classrooms or sometimes even different schools, or to be able to have a voice to stand up for a parent. It really takes on a critical role at every spectrum in order to be able to help people transition past what has happened to them into that next season of wholeness for them.
Yeah. And I think that's so amazing just to hear how City Hope is partnering with other groups. It's not just a standalone effort. And I really think it just speaks to the whole community aspect of advocacy and engagement, of how it's good to have one organization for sure. And that's wonderful. But we truly are stronger together. And so just seeing the power of combined forces and creating those bigger changes is so amazing and powerful.
And I think it's so interesting that, at least for the role that City Hope gets to play, it really is based upon the individual. Sometimes we think that it has to be those legislative things, and those are critical and necessary. And I'm incredibly thankful for the people that have a voice to that. And there's parts of what we do that's on a larger scale, but also because we've created this forum to be able to advocate for the individual in front of us, it has sparked the ability for others to come along and advocate as well. The principals that and the school districts that advocate for us to be able to be there, the officers on the scene that will advocate for us and tell clients, hey, there really is someone that can come and help, and to be able to put us there, and then to watch people advocate for each other and themselves, um, from a position of, we are really trying to help the one. I might not be able to change laws. Maybe I can, but I know I can change life through advocacy for one person in front of me and watch the ripple effects of what happens because of that.
Yeah, that is so true. And I think that's something that's important to remember, especially at least for this podcast. We're having a few different guests and they're talking about the different levels of advocacy. And I think that your story and City Hope's work really just speak to the fact that you don't need to go and do this like big, like marching on Capitol Hill necessarily, or go to your state legislators, but you can be an advocate just by being in your community and looking at where the needs are and connecting with organizations that already exist. And so I think that's a wonderful thing. And I know some of your volunteers and they're all amazing. And I know that it has changed their lives. It's just so cool to see how it all works together and just how one individual life can really impact so many others. And so this leads me into my next question of, what are some valuable lessons that you have taken away from being a community advocate and leading City Hope at this point in your life? And what doors has advocacy opened up for you?
Mm. I think that some of the lessons that taking away is that there are really amazing people out there that are equipped to be able to do amazing things. And I think sometimes we discount the voices, and we do it in a couple of different ways. We either discount the ones that aren't educated or that don't have the letters after their name or a position to be able to advocate from. And then sometimes we take the people with stories, and we so value those stories, and they are priceless and they are invaluable. And the lessons learned through those stories are incredible and should be told. But sometimes we don't think, if we don't have a story, that we can do much, right? We can have a platform and people will listen because we have this crazy story. And mine's not a crazy story personally. I am helping and creating an organization that will navigate people through crises that I've never personally experienced. Some of my volunteers have, and some of them haven't. And you don't have to. We discount ourselves sometimes, and we shouldn't. If we have a voice, then we have the ability to be able to help and to see somebody else be able to come into a position where they can use their voice as well. The most significant lesson that I've learned is in all of my training and education, and how you use words and how you craft arguments, and that type of thing. There's just some things that we shouldn't be arguing or convincing people to do. And this idea of their free will and their voice, and helping create a forum where they can use their voice and empowering them to use their voice, even if it's different than what I may know is wise for them. And we come across this a lot in the sphere of domestic violence and trafficking, that we know the woman needs to leave or the man needs to leave. We know that person being abused needs to leave. And we've learned very well that we can use our words and our experience, and we can craft a situation that will almost manipulate them into leaving. And that's the worst thing that we can do. It can't be about giving them a voice as long as they do what we want them to do. They need to be empowered to make their decisions. We need to support even the ones that we don't agree with when it comes to their own life, and stand by and be ready when they're ready to make a different decision. And so when you have the ability to persuade, and you have the ability to use words and arguments and things like that, it comes with great responsibility. It can't just be about getting what I think follows my agenda. It needs to truly be about what is best for that person and their capacities at that time too.
Yeah. And I think that also just really speaks to the importance of long term relationships and connections, and that advocacy or community engagement or just connecting with others isn't a one and done, put a band aid on it type of deal. No, it's, going back and really checking in on that person and being there for them in ways that are difficult, and knowing that they have someone there for them when times are difficult for them as well. And so I think that's just wonderful and hard, but also just wonderful to think about the idea that if you're truly helping to give other people a voice and help them find their voice, it's about stepping back and silencing your own voice in some ways. And that's what leadership and advocacy are about in a lot of ways, is knowing where your place is and when your place is done and when to start handing that over. So, this next question is for listeners out there. What is some advice you'd give to people who are wanting to get more involved in their community or wanting to be advocates and really just don't know where to start or if it's worth their time? Do you have advice for those people out there?
I think one, we have to recognize it will always be worth our time. Even our mental health professionals and the scientists and the people that get paid to do all of the studies, one of the things that we know is that when you'll serve somebody else, when you'll commit to community service, you'll do something for somebody else, it even changes the chemical reactions going on in your own body. And there is really, truly nothing quite like knowing you've made a difference in somebody else's life that day, and that you've been placed in that place of honor. And so I think one, it is absolutely worth it all the way around. If somebody is struggling in some ways, man, decide you're going to do something. And you can start a couple of different ways. You can start by seeing, kind of what floats your boat. What are you passionate about? What causes the greatest reaction in you? And if you don't know, ask the people around you. What do you hear me talk about? What do you hear me fight for? When do I get the most passionate? I'm married and I've got 3 kids, and they can all tell you probably better than I can at times what my passions are, because they hear about it and I'm just going through my day-to-day life. So figure out what you're passionate about, and then start figuring out where you can plug into something that's already happening. For me, it was the police department, to plug in as a chaplain there and to just be able to serve where I was needed and take notice. And it was little things. It was an officer calling me, telling me that a mom and children got locked out of their place and they don't have a place to stay and they don't know if I can do anything about it. I literally rolled up to that scene with a teddy bear, some snacks, and $100 ready to give them a night in a hotel and connect them with other agencies that could do more than I could later on. And I was like, there's a niche here. There's something that I can do. And I've been asked time and time again if I really think that we will be able to end trafficking or end domestic violence and those types of things. And I go back to kind of my constant refrain is, I don't know. I don't know if I can fix, but I do know that we can help. And that makes all the difference. We have seen women that have escaped trafficking. We've been part of it. We've been there with them at 3:15 in the morning when they found their way to be able to escape and flagged down law enforcement. And we took it from there and reunited them with family. We've been able to make a difference in a life, in numerous lives. And that's where we start. Where can you start? You don't have to start with articles and bylaws to run your own nonprofit. jump into what's needed. If something's already going on, how can you come along and how can you help? What can you do? And focus on that and see what ends up developing as the time goes on from there.
Yeah, that's great advice. I think definitely exploring your passions and figuring out where you can use your skills or your knowledge or where you even want to grow your knowledge and just learn more and be humbled in that way. Yeah. And so, just to close us off, is there anything listeners can do to support you in City Hope, whether it's reaching out to you guys as volunteers, donating, whatever ways? Yeah.
So we've got a couple of different ways. If you are in the San Diego area, we just signed an agreement with the sheriff's office to start serving county-wide. So we've been primarily in East County. So we are on a huge growth spurt. So we need volunteers. We are starting an email list. Sometimes we just need to be able to be like, hey, does anybody have this size clothing? And get donations that way so that we don't have to spend money on buying some of those things. Our website is www.cityhopenow.org, and you can sign up to be a volunteer, and you can donate online there as well. And we are primarily volunteer ran. We work on a tiny fraction of a budget, which is just amazing to me that we can do what we do for the funds that we have, but we need to grow that with us serving the whole county. So donations on a regular basis or a one-time thing is great. And then truly, our team has a heart to serve. And so our office line is on the website, and be our ambassador. If you know of a situation where we might be able to help somebody, let us know. Give us a call. And if we can jump in and help, we will.
That's great. And congrats again for expanding and growing. That's so exciting. And it comes with so many new and wonderful things. Thank you also for just being on the show and giving some of your amazing advice. I'm so glad to have you here.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity. I think what you're doing is incredible. And I think that there's a voice for everybody, and we need to be able to hear it. So thanks for making that happen.